Hey Tegan, what's in the bag? It's the show where I get home from the comic book store and we look through my bag because, say it with me folks, yes, I spend too much money on comic books. What can I say? I enjoy it. I enjoy buying comic books. Again, it's a strange thing. I think the direct market's kind of fun. If you have a little bit of discretionary income that you can throw in the direction of your local retailer, the direct market has many things to recommend it for those with the eyes to look. And one of them is that it enables the improbable creation of artifacts like what we're looking at today, which is a random ass reprinting of Betty and Me 16 from, are you going to tell me when the original date was? From a long time ago. Where's the... Oh, so there, this looks like a full on, like the Marvel and DC ones. Excellent. But you're not giving me the year, because I'm not going to get it right off the top of my head. Sometime in the 60s. Because it's 12 cents, so it's late 60s. And this comic is not the first appearance of anyone. This is not like the first Cheryl Blossom or the first Dilton Time Machine or anything like that. Well, okay. If you can read the cover on whatever screen you're looking at this at, you'll see that this has to have been, this is such an absolute single entendre. And yet it sailed right on by, and it's always been really in demand because of it. So that's why it's a scarce issue, because probably the issues on either side of this can be found for much less money than the one that has the infamous dirty joke on the cover. So, of course, Archie 2024, hey, when they started their facsimile program, because their facsimiles are making enough money that they can print enough of these, there's a market for them, what's the first thing they went to? Yeah. That's a very Archie 2024 move. That is not Archie 1992 move. Certainly not Archie 1961. The brand has evolved some, but wow, the fact that it still exists and is actually really vigorous, even in the direct market. They still have a presence in the direct market. That's not even something you could have predicted 30 years ago. And yet there you go. There's an Archie book on the stands in the direct market close to every week. That's pretty good. That's more than they had 30 years ago. So just on the comic book publishing alone, the fact that they pivoted to horror and darker fantasy and just, we're talking in the shadow of the fact that they've had at least two that I'm thinking of really successful television adaptations. They got a whole generation of people into both the Archie gang and Sabrina. So, hey, I don't doubt that Archie's going to be around forever. They figured it out. They're still around, which is, like I say, 30 years ago, extrapolating from where the comic book industry was heading, that wasn't necessarily something that you could have predicted. They licensed their characters to DC before. But that really isn't what happened. So yeah, this artifact here is in that spirit. It's fun. It's clearly they figured out what the market is for the direct market demographics to buy an Archie comic. So they're selling facsimiles, and this will probably do really well. Obviously, it will probably do really well because you want to own a copy of that comic. Everyone who's ever seen that has wanted to own a copy of this comic. And now you can. For the Nice price of $3.99. And it's not on shiny. It's on this really very earthy, kind of thin, late newsstand texture here. Nice looking comic book. Wow, that is an ad. That is a terrifying thing to find in your comic book. My God. Dear Betty, I don't know if I would trust her answers. I've seen her in action. Safety pays. There you go. Man, that is like old school. I'm not really an expert in old school Archie, so they still had this safety ad running with the versions of the characters from, even then, 15 or 20 years ago. Man, look at this. You want this. You're going to go and you're going to buy a copy of this. That's why I put it up first. Yeah, I buy the occasional Archie comic book. They put out an interesting package on the direct market. Yeah. That's more than I bought when I was the Archie Comics demographic. So, I'm doing my part. Man, look at this. They used to just sell this. You could walk into a gas station in Wyoming and buy this comic off a rack and read it with your sandwich. That was legal. 12 cents. And, there's a reason. There's a reason why these characters are still around, and it's because of these artists who really put their all into making such absolutely gorgeous comic books. For kids, don't get me wrong. This is still very much kids' material. I find reading old Archies is an every now and again activity. I don't know if I could sit down and read more than, an issue's worth of these in a sitting. But you don't need to gorge yourself when the art is this nice. Man, look at this. To be able to use the brush that smoothly and that consistently, superhuman talent for like 12 cents. And then you could cut out the ad and mail in for your GED, which, probably quite a few people did. Do you need extra money? It costs you nothing to try. Man, they just, as much as I hate to say it, because I'm an evangel on the subject of we need to put ads back in comics. We need to put comics back where people can find them. At the same time, I freely acknowledge a great deal of the ad economy of that previous iteration of the industry was built on scams aimed at little children. We can't deny that. And that was a significant advertiser base that, I'm not going to say they don't sell scams to children, but, man, some of those in hindsight. Okay, so this is a book that I've mentioned a couple times. And when I saw this on the stands today, my goodness, I've been waiting for this. I hope you've been waiting for this as well, because this is the new project by Goran and Sudzuka. I know nothing else about that book. I know Stephanie Phillips is writing it. I've read comic books of hers I've enjoyed. I've read a few comic books of hers that I probably don't remember that well. But honestly, it could have been anyone. I'm here for this man. Because I am absolutely 100% on board with this guy. Since I sat down and read the Marjorie Finnegan Temporal Criminal 8-part series that he did with Garth Ennis. I love that series. I thought that series was an absolute hoot and a half. It was everything I always liked about Garth Ennis. And it didn't take itself quite so seriously. It seemed to know that it was trying to have fun, at least. And it was elevated so much by this absolute masterclass by this artist who I had never really paid any attention to, although I think I'd seen a few bits and pieces of his over the years. But seeing all his work in hindsight, I realized this guy was special from the beginning. He is a talent that I do not think necessarily has quite had his day. He's maybe due for a killer run on Batman to really put him on people's radar. And, that's just the way this world works. If you want to be taken seriously, draw a Batman comic. But I'm saying, right now, this guy is good. This guy is really good. His fundamentals are absolutely... What was I saying? He has absolutely rock solid fundamentals. Just, it reads so well. And his drawing, even just in the few years since I've been following him, his drawing ability has, I think, improved from what started out really strong. There isn't a bum line on this page. Characters are interesting, attractive. Who's coloring this jam? Ive Swarchina? I'm sorry if I'm not getting that right. But it's good. It's really good. Here's some browns. Pretty good job with a few pages of browns. This feels lit as opposed to, the very enervated Vertigo brown palette that we screamed about for years, and they never did anything about. The series here and there would be interesting, but the coloring was the Achilles heel of that entire line for, a large percentage of its existence. But this is interesting, almost a sparse, 100 bullets approach here. He started out with a very pared down line, and it seems like he's pared down even more. Yeah, this guy, he could have, this guy looks like he needs to be working with Al Ewing, straight up. Get something out there so that people can see how good he is. My goodness, look at that. Look at this, friend. Red Before Black by Stephanie Phillips, Goran, Sudzuka, and Ive Swarchina. This right here. This is oh my God. This is the business right here. Ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Yes. Are you looking at this? I was just complaining about the color palette. My goodness. My goodness. Yes. Look at this. Folks. This is a nice looking comic book. Straight up. I have no idea what it's about. I'm just flipping through it. Oh, and then we're back to the browns for a teaser at the end. Interesting. I'm on board. I'm so on board with this. You have no idea. I'm on board with this too. Boom. You're doing pretty good lately. You're on my good list. Who's in charge over there? They're doing something right. All right, here's one I was really excited about. It's big, so I'm just going to announce its presence and flip through it quickly, but this is the latest StarHenge. I think it's one of the most visually interesting, thought-provoking series that we've seen in decades. Straight up. This is how we want comics to look, even if you're maybe not completely a fan of, Arthurian space opera. It's such a beautiful object from beginning to end, and so much thought has been put into it. And in terms of actual research, there's quite a bit of literature. There's some reading involved even, but the overall effect is just so deeply felt. I find this whole thing just absolutely captivating because it really goes for it, straight up. And that was my disappointment with that, and I didn't want to be disappointed in it, with that Exomat. See, there's some reading, a little bit of Jonathan Hickman. I'm glad that people maybe have a little bit more tolerance for reading. If there's one thing that I always thought that the text pages in the X-Men books, they rubbed me the wrong way. Like, I don't know what it was. I just didn't like them. But I don't mind the occasional bit of text. For a lushly illustrated material like this, okay, he put a lot of work into this. I'll put some time into reading this. That's why he's putting the prose there, so you have to linger over what he's drawing. But my goodness. Folks, I understand that this book maybe is struggling. People aren't picking up on it. And if I could snap my fingers and make this book at least a medium-sized hit, man, I would do that. Because it is so refreshing to buy something that is just absolutely a project of love from first to the last. A book that you can tell this guy just enjoys making so much. That is such a rare and precious thing, and it always has been, but it's always been one of the strange quirks of the direct market that we've been amenable to those kind of projects sometimes. And this one really seems like it needs to be picked up on more, because I want to see more of it. I want big, thick volumes of this on my shelf. And I don't know if I'm going to get that. And that makes me very sad because I really like this series a lot. I think this series is pretty fantastic. And it's not just because, love reference, there you go. And not just because I spent a great deal of graduate school and undergrad, picking at the main Arthurian corpus. Which I could never really figure out what had to do with anything else other than the fact that I couldn't stop myself from taking any of the Arthuriana that was offered. Because every time I do, I learn so much about the origins. Those stories especially, they're just wound into the fabric of Western civilization. So no one really digs Arthur that much except for nerds. Because it's all the old stories. Once you understand the old stories. I know this sounds so corny. That is so corny, but it's true. It's 100% true. Once you actually go back and read, like, the Les Amours de France, it's like a cheat code for culture. All of those Arthur books ended up being massively influential. So I'm always down for people in the present day. Hey, straight up, I don't want to surprise anyone, but Camelot 3000 is in the chamber for the Tech Talk. I'm not saying soon, but we have it. And we're going to be doing that, and that's going to be very fun. I'm looking forward to that, even if I'm not doing it anytime soon. All right, straight up, I don't know if I'm a sucker or not. I bought another of the EC books, but it was the one that I actually was a little bit interested in when they were originally announced. The first one, I don't know, man. That first one didn't really grab me. This one, though, I think based on the talent, I was a bit more excited about this, reading about it in advance. And straight up, I'm as so much of a sucker for, sci-fi stuff in comics that, yeah, I will give it straight up a shot. The horror one just, I don't think it was your best foot forward. I'm sorry. But this isn't your first foot, so let's see how it stands on the merits. Because, for $4.99, if it's bad, I just don't buy number 2. But if it's terrible, I still get, frankly, this cover by, I think this is the J.H. Williams, the third one. Yeah, because I wanted this. This is a nice cover. I'm sorry. This is a nice cover by J.H. Williams on its own. I'll usually at least, flip through anything I see his name on it because, history has shown that to be a wise investment. They're still using the font. Who's drawing this? Kano with Matt Kint. Well, that's a all-star combo, and it's a nice-looking story. Can't say it isn't. I'll be honest with you. As a writer, I've never really warmed to Matt Kint's work-for-hire stuff because I remember just really being cold to his early, because I saw all his early, I want to say top shelf material. I want to say top shelf, but maybe there were a couple other publishers there. I just was not that impressed. And he was able to turn that into a rather large career writing comic books. So, fair game to him. I just don't remember liking those early comic books that much. And it colored, whenever I see his name since then. But I also haven't paid that much attention because his stuff hasn't grabbed me that much. So, Caitlin Yarsky drawing the next one for Karina Bechko. That's a good match. That's a good pair of people. Oh, and they're looking at a black hole. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to buy a comic book if I see a black hole in it. I'm just that type of person. If that makes me a mark for black holes, yes. I watch news about black holes like every day, if it is offered to me. And you should too. They're awesome. Okay, and who's doing this third feature here? Chris Condon and Jonathan Case. And this doesn't look terrible. This actually looks pretty decent. Who's coloring this? It's Jonathan Case just doing all the art. Well, there you go. He knows how to color his own work. Oh, there you go. And this looks interesting. What is this? Oh, yeah. Artyom Topolin with Ben H. Winters writing. But yeah, he's a name that you should at least be, looking at when you see. Look at this. Look at this. This is nice. Okay. Straight up, I'm still not a fan of, you could have published this comic without the logo. We all know what's going on here. Oh my goodness, this is nice looking. This is nice looking, folks. That first one, no. This one, yeah, kind of. Okay. This is a nice looking comic book, and I know you're thinking, Tegan, you're just a sucker for like a decently drawn comic book. Yes, I am. I'm sorry. They're getting Dave Lapham to do one of these things. got Javier Fernandez. Do you expect me to not buy a new comic by Javier Fernandez? Riley Rossimo? Folks. Leo Max. I'm just seeing that now. Okay. Yeah, all right. This is the one. If you're thinking there might be anything decent from this EC relaunch, the horror one was tired. This one's actually got a little bit of juice, a little bit. The sci-fi one. Maybe it's just because I'm starved for sci-fi comics. I love them. We read Spanner's Galaxy on the TikTok. That comic book is not very good, and I loved it. All right. You knew I was getting this. Gotham City Sirens #1. As you may recall, Gotham City Sirens, in its first incarnation, was the series that introduced the world to Guillaume March, who has become in recent years one of my absolute favorite artists. I buy absolutely everything I see of his. I just think the absolute world of his talent. And Gotham City Sirens was a book that he originated that was, it's a bunch of very beautiful women having adventures together. And that's more or less the size of it. They had a really strong, good girl artist who was coming into the mainstream straight up with Milo Manara under his belt. And I remember at the time some of his books, like his Catwoman, some of that stuff was downright controversial. And then you look back and you see, well, okay, we remember it. It's interesting now. And now that influence seems a little bit more above board. But I say that even knowing that Manara drew an X-Men comic. It's a really weird X-Men comic. But I'm not particularly a fan of Manara. But I like what Guillaume March does with Manara. And so he imprinted that on a little corner of the DC universe with Catwoman and a few other of the villain characters who could just get together and have, I don't want to say lighthearted, but, just a different kind of adventure book necessarily than the Batman line had been supporting for a while in many ways, in the spirit of Jim Balent. Okay, yeah. This looks good, folks. This is a nice looking comic book. I'm sorry if you were hoping this was going to look terrible after that build up. No, I'm telling you, this is a pretty nice looking comic book. Nice colors. Oh, here's that Batman Forever ad again. It's not going to work on me, because I don't actually like any of these characters as designs. Two-Face isn't terrible, but these are terrible designs for every other character in the movie. But the movie itself, I think, holds up together kind of shockingly well. It's not very good in a way that I will say that Batman and Robin, I think, is legitimately a very good, if misunderstood, movie. Just the fact that so many people dislike it should tell you that, it had a brain in its head. It was trying to do something. And this was not a good movie, but it's a fun movie. And I hate all of the designs from it. They're all ugly as sin, every one of them. The fact that this Riddler design is pretty comics accurate, that's just an indictment of the character right there. That's how he looked on Super Friends, more or less, I think. So yeah, here's Ivy, and I'm on board for pretty much anything with Harley and Ivy. Because, you get older, the grave yawns. I don't buy Catwoman every month. Sometimes I catch up with Catwoman in the discount bins because, it can be good or it can be just readable. Okay, there we go. I'm glad that the comics industry doesn't seem to be, it seems to understand that there's a thirst for, oh, not for her. Well, I guess I spoiled it. I'm sorry. Straight up. Okay. I don't know if there's a thirst for that character. I've seen Casually Comics. She did a series of videos on this character where she, I think, had trouble justifying, even to herself, that there was anything interesting at all about this character. I've never read anything of hers that impressed me, so, well. It's only 4 issues, straight up. I think this is a limited series. I'm only really committing to a limited series in my heart. It'll actually have to be pretty decent for me to stick with it. But I'm giving it a shot because the recent Birds of Prey relaunch, high quality book, highly recommended. One of the best books, like top 2 or 3 books from anyone coming out right now. Even with the guest artists, it's really good. But, Poison Ivy was only supposed to be a limited series too, and that's why it's the little series that could, and I think it's more or less cemented her as a headliner if anyone was doubting it. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, this is practically the Avengers for a solid chunk of the DC profit margin. I think, this book will probably do pretty well, but, it doesn't need my support, but it has my appreciation. Straight up, it was a punishing week. For some reason, it just, a lot of stuff came home with me. So this is the first appearance of Gambit in facsimile form, which for some reason I never had, because this was in a period of X-Men where I did not understand what was happening in this book. It was not at the top of my priority list because I knew I was supposed to read it, but I did not understand it. At this point, I came in right at the end of the Claremont run, and that is just some straight-up unintelligible comics. If you're coming in out of the cold, I can attest. Of course, it didn't take me that long to catch up. Classic X-Men was already being published, and I did buy that more consistently at times. But for some reason, I think I bought the issue after this. But I didn't buy this one. It's probably because I didn't see it. Because what I remember is that I didn't always find X-Men. It was a book that just didn't always show up at my newsstand because I was still buying the bulk of my comics at the newsstand at the time. And just a little bit later, I would figure out how to be more consistent of things by, I didn't live in the same town as a comic book store, but my parents traveled to larger cities often enough that I was able to regularly, start buying a wider variety of comics. But for many years, I still bought the bulk of my comics from the newsstand with my allowance in my pocket or in a gas station on the way home from school. It was a wonderful delivery mechanism for comic books, and we threw it away. They still have magazine stands in every supermarket in the country. And yet, I scan the racks and I see nothing resembling a comic book. And it just seems the greatest dereliction that they let that happen. They should have done anything. They should have put their institutional muscle into rebuilding that retail model And it withered on the vine. They didn't really care to put any real investment into it once it started to die. And now we have the direct market. There are some wonderful things about the direct market as a delivery mechanism for serialized storytelling and for weird one-offs. And the occasional, really fun superhero comic book. It's a convenient delivery mechanism. And it's not meant to be the whole of the industry. We need to put something back where you can get it for half the price of a regular magazine, which was always how the price structure was, more or less. Something your mom can get when you're nagging at her about it, because it's really cheap. If we can get back to that price point. So this is Chris Claremont on the tail end of his run. Mike Collins, he was a British guy, I think, who this time, which they were double shipping the book like crazy. So there was a period where it just straight up didn't really have a regular artist, because Jim Lee did a few issues, Mark Silvestri was still doing it, they had this Mike Collins fella, they had a couple people, and it kind of seemed aimless. And in hindsight, considering how badly it ended, I don't want the kids to think that Claremont's X-Men was on an upswing when Claremont left. The books were showing signs of strain. An argument, a good faith argument, could have been made that maybe, he should have taken the foot off the pedal earlier. But the fact is, coming in late, it was just, I had no idea. I was buying it when I had $1 extra, when a character I recognized was on the cover. And, this guy would not have really stuck out much, I think. I don't remember necessarily thinking that he was cool the first, 20 times I saw him. He's still not really my favorite, but I've grown to appreciate him, straight up. I think Gambit, well, there he is in all his oleaginous glory. And of course, what he ended up being so far away from Claremont's initial design, it might as well be a different character. And when he came back and wrote the character later, he had to deal with the reality. But if I recall correctly, Gambit was supposed to be something completely different. And like Mr. Sinister, it just got completely flat in the moment he was out the door. And it's like, no, there's nothing more to this guy other than just what you see in a mysterious backstory where he's not going to be some psychic projection or anything like that. I still say, man, if Claremont had stayed on the books long enough to do his original Mr. Sinister revelation, man, that would have taken a rather strong pillar out of decades of X-Men stories that followed. Just that one, aversion there. This game here. This game, I wasted $50 allowance saving up for this. I still remember that ride home. I still remember. This was the trauma of a generation. We wanted nothing more than a fun X-Men game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and they gave us nothing. That console, it just didn't, it had some beat 'em ups. That was about it. Bonk. My best friend from high school had the TurboGrafx, and he always said Bonk was fun as hell, and he'd beat it a dozen times. So, it's not a game anyone, I don't think, has it ever been given a Nintendo port even? I don't know. Does anyone remember Bonk? Wither Bonk. I don't remember what Claremont's original deal with Gambit was. But anyway, if they just take this character straightforward, if they just take this character straight on, I think he could be a $1 billion character. Straight up, just take him seriously as a devil-may-care, rakish ladies' man thief. It's not my favorite type of character, but that is a popular character across, like, centuries of media. And they've never really been able to capitalize just on that high concept with him. To their credit, they tried. I think the closest they came was the series they did with Claremont, which was pretty decent, but it only lasted a year because it was from a period where nothing, even the best books, were having trouble lasting past a year. You say, well, how's that any different from now? I don't know, just the vibes are different. But, and that lasted a polite year. They had good art with Claremont, early Claremont. But, and now he's married, and that's so popular. And I hate it because I love Rogue, but I love Rogue on her own. I actually like both characters and think they're wasted on being married to each other, straight up. You can't say I'm a hater for either Rogue or Gambit, because I will say straight up, I like both of those characters. I think they're just done a tremendous disservice by being in a marriage, because it's not just that it's a marriage, it's a popular marriage, it's a stable marriage. It's memed as being a functional marriage. So it really does feel like sour grapes. Like, I don't like it when she's married. I want her to go back to being single and miserable. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person. But I attest, this movie, I remember, like, straight up, this ad sold terror. And the movie was just, it was Amblin. It was really soft edges. Sort of like a little bit of Gremlins, only a tiny bit more scary because it's real spiders. But this should have been terrifying, straight up. And that's not the movie they set out to make. But this is what this ad sold for a generation of kids. It's not a movie people remember fondly because it really, oversold and under-delivered there. So, we got any fun? No fun letters. There's Mystique. What's she doing? She's doing something. Oh, Mystique and Val Cooper. Man, I have to admit, in hindsight, this subplot seems like this strange office politics that just every couple issues there'd be a page of just these two women who really hate each other but have to work together. Almost like a weird dystopian sitcom within the larger book. And, they did some interesting things with Val Cooper. I think Val Cooper was an interesting character. I think you might struggle to figure out a context for her in the modern world, but who knows? That's a healthy subscription ad. There's still some books on here that aren't going to be long for this world. Straight up, I think in hindsight, I just didn't rent anything that had soldiers on it. That was definitely a big thing in my house. You don't bring home anything, emblazoned with soldiers and war propaganda. I wasn't the only one who grew up with that prohibition. But it meant that I didn't discover G.I. Joe until my 20s. So I came to it fully with the eyes of an adult. It was blown over. It was like a present that I had saved myself by completely ignoring it in youth. All right. If this were the storage locker, we'd go through the bullpen bulletins. But I'm not going to do you like that. No. All right, we'll do one more because I got this sitting in my bag. I've tried to stay fairly aloof from the hype for this, simply just because I didn't really want to know what was going on in it, because I was on board from the creators. Caspar Wijngaard, he's someone who he had a very strong couple years. He did a backup in Detective Comics, during the Mr. Freeze storyline. He did what was that? It was All Against All, or it came out. It looked fantastic, like a year and a half ago. So yeah, now he's working with Kieron Gillen on something that, it looks like it could run for a while. Because at this point, straight up, if anyone in this industry has a proven track record of getting a book to a decent run on the Image model, it's Kieron Gillen. This is not not his first, or even I think his third or his fourth or his fifth sustained creator-owned project that he's had. That they all end up running for 3 or 4 years. I think maybe one of them is dangling. Was Uber ever finished? Uber was a rough book, I have to admit. I think it was a good book, but it was a rough book. But a diverse set of different types of stories. And he comes through. He did a couple sort of about music. He did the one about mythology. He did the one about role-playing. This one, I think maybe I saw him saying something. This is like, these are the only 5 superpowered people on the planet or something. That's the hook. Who's doing the colors? Is Wijngaard coloring himself here? Yeah, I guess he is. With Clayton Cowles as lettering. Man. Nice looking comic. It seems like the type of take on superheroes you would expect to see in, like an anime series. High concept, built to run for a certain amount of time. Nice looking comic book. Oh, and yeah. Why don't you have like a bird holding a little sign with this caption on it? So then you can get Wijngaard to draw a little bird holding a sign. And then it's part of the page. Don't ask me why that bugs me so much. It just does. See, when Liam Sharp does it, he'll do the huge heavy metal, Uriah Heep album cover, and he'll put the paragraph right in the corner there, so you have to see the art. But I see both. I see the prudence of both approaches. It's a matter of pacing. To a degree, pacing is the determinant, stylistic arbiter at the big two, and, for all of their tributaries, such as, an Image creator-owned book, but still within the same, paradigm. Definitely, there's a world where DC never got rid of their, creator participation contract. There's a world where Kieron Gillen did some of his series with them, or if Marvel had Epic, or even Icon, but they're used to losing that money. That's, the Marvel of old would just want the shelf space, even if it meant they had to do any crazy thing like, publish a creator-owned comic. What mattered is that it was shelf space that wasn't going to the competitor. Even in good times, that was still their attitude. They even tried to compete with stuff like Love and Rockets a little tiny bit. If there was an inch, they were at least going to put a toe in it. Usually no more than a toe. They only did like one thing that was trying to even vaguely be like Love and Rockets. Just the fact that they did the one is pretty remarkable, though. I'm talking about Steel Town Rockers, by the way. We read it for the TikTok. It's one of the most interesting series Marvel ever did. I'm not paying any attention to this because I'm going to sit down and actually read this, see what it's about. It's, looks fun. Definitely looks like So I'm sure it's great. Oh, Jesus Christ. Kieron, why did you do this? What is... Oh, it's in different... Oh, it's in different languages. Okay. Well, that's not terrible. If this was something you wanted me to read... Like, I saw this, and at first I thought, that's not a text piece, is it? He doesn't think I'm going to read that. The bad things I thought about him in that split second before I realized, no, it's just the indicia. So, yeah, they got good people to do covers here. I think I brought home the A cover. Caspar Wijngaard, Stephanie Hans, Ryan Hughes, Tula Lotte, Blank Sketch. Blank Sketch, oh, that's my favorite artist. Yeah, okay, that's enough. It was a big, fun week. Pray for me when I go pick up my car from the mechanic on Monday. All right, so first thing I want to do, go buy this thing, Comics Journal Best of 2023, fresh in stores, $11.99 American from Fantagraphics. 10 of the best writers about comics, and a few practitioners as well, writing about, the comics journals, 10 best comic books of the year. There's not a bad book on this list. I haven't read them all as closely as I want to, but certainly some of these are some of my favorite writers writing today. And somehow they let yours truly in through the back door to write about Dan Clowes. I've never written about Dan Clowes before, I think, for any length. So there you go. Have at it. I do daily comic book reviews on TikTok and Instagram. I have a podcast with Claire Napier. It's called Udder Madness. We look at Top Cow Comics. That's Witchblade, The Darkness, Michael Turner, Mark Silvestri, all that great stuff. We love it. We have a great time. We just put up a brand new episode, bonus on the Patreon, about the brand new Witchblade #1. We didn't really care for it. I'm on board. I'm gonna at least see how it turns out. I think it could, probably recover, but maybe we were thinking about it too much. I concede that. I mean, straight up, I concede that. I mean, what is any of this if not me thinking about comic books too much? I should have a review coming out any day at the Journal. It's about Godzilla. It's a good review. I hope you enjoy it when it finally goes up. What else? I don't know. Wish me luck, folks.